specialist. I recently received my PhD from Cornell and was very happy to move back to my hometown of Charlotte. So yeah, really happy to be a part of the conference today. And more importantly, I'm learning so much. So I hope that everybody else that is also involved in the conference is learning as much as I am. I see Marcus has already shared his screen, but I wanted to just go over the ground rules, which we've discussed at the beginning of each one of the talks already today. First of all, please be patient and know that we're at the mercy of the technology that we're using. So if you do have any issues with the technology, please get in touch and we're happy to take care of it, but please be patient about those types of things. Also, please be respectful of all of the presenters today. Everyone has been gracious enough to come and share their insights and share their time. So please have lively discussions, but be respectful throughout. And please take this opportunity to engage and network with all these people that, once again, they're giving their time, they're available right now. So take advantage of that and reach out to people that are in the industry and can potentially be a great networking opportunity for us in the future. So I wanted to introduce today's speaker, Marcus Cunha. He is going to be talking about behavioral economics today. He is the professor of marketing and director of Master of Marketing Research Program at UGA. And today he's going to talk about implications for marketing and consumer insight professionals. And we are all looking forward to hearing your talk, Marcus, and I'll let you take it from here. I think you're still muted, Marcus.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. So I was just thanking for the opportunity to participate in the QVIC conference. In these days that we are quarantined, it's a great opportunity to be able to share our thoughts. My talk is going to be a little different than the previous talks because I come from an academic standpoint, but I have great connections with the industry because of my role as director of the MMR program at University of Georgia. So the topic today is a topic that's very hot in the industry these days, the idea of behavioral economics and behavioral theories, and what can we learn from such theories to be better researchers. So if I can get my... All right. So I usually give this talk to, private corporations or business associations or to students and research programs, and I focus on these 4 areas. For the time being, I think what we're going to focus today is to figure out what really is behavioral economics, and I'm going to go over some heuristics and biases that I want to show you based on your own data. So I see that we have 133 people right now participating, and I have 58 people who took the survey. So the large majority of you already failed the course. So behavioral economics. Behavioral economics is a theory that was developed to challenge what we call classical economics. It's this idea that we have this unbounded rationality. We are just computing machines that can maximize our utility all the time. It's the assumption that we always pursue and achieve optimal options. We're excellent at calibrating chances and risk and computing expected values. Preferences are consistent across time and places. Good service and money are of equal value and perfectly substitute each other, and states of wealth determine how we fare against each other. So that's classical economics and the idea of unbounded rationality. Well, this classical theory is considered as a theory that's normative. It tells us how we should behave. Okay? They suggest that we should always be maximizing our utility. And to do so, we would process information in a way to be able to estimate what's the expected value of every situation. Behavioral economics theory, on the other hand, they're positive. They describe actually how the world works, not how it should work. I'm not saying that conventional or classical economic theories are of no value. They are very valuable because they provide us with a standard that let us know how much we are deviating from that rational ideal behavior. So they describe how we behave. Show how we use these heuristics that lead to errors in perceptions and decisions, and they are based on this idea that our rationality is bounded and not unbounded. As you see, like with that citation, 1955, although behavioral economics has gained a lot of interest recently, the principles underlying behavioral economics are not that novel. People in psychology have been studying behavioral decision theory, judgment decision making, but I think economists were better at marketing it to the industry. And I think behavioral economists also did a good job at bringing the academic findings into the industry and applying them. So behavioral economics got a lot of attention when the behavioral insights team of the UK was put together to help influence how people behave. It also, during the Obama administration, it was very prevalent with a lot of behavioral economists helping government influence how people choose for healthier options, how they choose better treatments, how we save energy. So, for example, you could tell people you're spending too much in energy, and that affects the environment, and that affects your cost. But a better way might be just like, well, look, relative to your neighbor, you are spending this much. Just show a bar graph to influence behavior. So behavior economics is not that new, but I think its application leaving the academia to the industry is what's more novel. So I usually, when I present this to the audience, I play this game. It's called the ultimatum game. So I select two players, and I tell them I'm giving one of the players $10. This player has then to make an offer to another player to keep some amount of their money. So for example, if I got $10 and you guys are playing against me, I will make you an offer. Right? So let's say I offer you $5. And then if you accept my offer, we both keep our money. If you guys reject my offer, none of us keep the money. Okay? So generally speaking, when I do this, the audience, they know each other. That people are going to make offers that are around $5, $4, or $6 if they're being extra generous. From a classic economic standpoint, the rational decision in terms of maximizing utilities would be, I would offer you $1. I would maximize my utility, and you should be happy that you got $1. Because if you turn down that offer, you're going to get $0. But what we see in reality is that people deviate from those standards. And that's where behavioral theories come into place, and that's what people call irrational behavior. It's not irrational from the standpoint that we're used to, but deviates from that idea of bounded rationality and machines that process information to come up with the optimal utility for themselves. So you could influence that. I could, if I tell a player, well, imagine you took a quiz, and because you did much better than everybody else, you got the $10, but you only get the $10 if the person accepts the offer. You might be less willing to offer $5 because you earned that. Or what if somebody you never saw before, and you're never going to see that person again? It's what we call a one-shot game. There is a good chance that you might offer lower amount. So, so depending on the context of the situation or how the money came about, it might change your behavior. So I bet many of you already heard of this, that we have two distinctive ways to think, system 1 and system 2. That's not the only dual processing theories. There are many dual processing theories, such as heuristic systematic processing, elaboration likelihood model. So it's not an uncommon thing in psychology to have dual process theories. But this theory said that we have this system one that's fast, intuitive, efficient, habit-based, that help us to make decisions that are very quick, and we don't have to exert a lot of effort in making these decisions. However, the system is always on, and it's essentially non-conscious. You're not evaluating every step of your decision. Sometimes the system is not able to help us support a decision, or sometimes there's a factor that influences our decision, such as it's a higher risk decision or it's a high involvement decision. In that case, system 2 kicks in. This system is reflective, controlled, resource consuming, good at complex decision tasks, it's conscious, and it's complex decisions. As you can tell, this system is very resource consuming. So if possible, we tend to avoid to use this system, which means that the majority of our decisions are influenced or processed in the system 1. Now, what's the behavioral economics criticism of market research? The criticism comes from the idea that the vast majority of consumer decisions are based on system 1. However, a large bulk of market research is designed to evoke system 2. So for example, when you ask somebody, walk me through your laundry detergent purchase decision. Because you were asking a question, you feel compelled to comply with their request. And then you're going to think, oh yeah, how do I buy laundry detergent? Well, first I go to the store, I read the ingredients, I see if there are like discounts or something. But we know that a majority of those decisions that are low involvement, they are not done that way. Perhaps your previous purchase is the best predictor of your new forthcoming behavior. So that's one of the criticisms why behavioral economics think that sometimes market research can be misleading. All right, so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to show you a few examples of rationality. As I mentioned, you guys participated in a survey. I got 58 responses up until yesterday when I processed the data. So the survey, for the most part, were behavioral experiments that I designed based on past research or my own research in order to influence your behavior and show how based on my choice architecture, I can influence the outcome of your answers. So I'm going to show a few of these effects: anchoring adjustment, context and framing effects, temporal effects, and hedonic editing. And I'm going to talk about a few theories that help us to predict, because behavior economics and behavioral decision theory is not based on like just observing behavior. We, people that have studied that, and we're going to have a session in behavioral economics with 30 or 40 minutes, you can get a PhD in this area. So there's a lot of theories that help us to predict this kind of behaviors. We're not going to be talking today about nudges because of time constraints, but those are the kind of things that I was giving an example how governments are trying to influence better behavior. How can people eat healthier, exercise more, or save more energy? So let me give you a few examples. The idea of anchoring and adjustments is that your judgments might be influenced by numbers to which you are exposed. Okay? And also you could think of this of first impression bias. You get a first impression about somebody you meet, and then it's harder for you to adjust that as you get more information about that person. And usually people are unaware of the influence of an anchor. So as I mentioned, I did a series of experiments where I randomly assign you guys to one of two conditions, and all the order of the choices have all been randomized. So there is nothing here that could be systematically leading to the results, except the theories behind such behaviors. So for about half of you, I asked you, what's the population of the Turkey? And I asked that to everybody, but for half of you, I said, like, is it larger or smaller than 300,000? And for the other half, I asked, is it larger or smaller than 300 million people? Okay. And then I asked, okay, what's your estimate of Turkey's population? So I presented with an anchor that was either low or high, and you were asked to estimate the population. So what kind of results here? The people that were in the low anchor, they estimated that the average population of Turkey was 41 million people, and the participants in the high anchor condition, they estimate that an average is 85 million people. The actual population is estimated around 82 million people. So, but see, and this is statistically significant. So it means even with a very small sample, I'm trying to show that this was not driven because of like a few outliers. So I have been able to consistently influence your estimation by just present with a low or high anchor. I also did that by asking a question about Mahatma Gandhi. So I asked if Mahatma Gandhi died before or after the age of either 140 years old, right, or 9 years old. Both are very extreme estimates. I find it hard to believe that anybody believed that Mahatma Gandhi died when he was 140, when he was 140, or when he was 9 years old. And then I ask you to estimate the what age Mahatma Gandhi was when he died. Well, he was 78 when he was assassinated. So the people in the low anchor, when I asked if they were before or after 9 years old, they estimate that his age was 68.3, and the people in the high anchor, they were, the estimate was 82, okay? Again, a significant difference in the estimate. I was asking exactly the same question to everybody, but I offered an anchor that influenced and pulled the judgments in a direction that was, you know, either lower or higher. So I also wanted to show you an example in a marketing context. So I said, imagine you went to the grocery store and you saw a sign stating the following. So for half of you, I presented this information. Buy Snickers bars for your freezer. I didn't provide any anchor. For the other half, I tried to influence your behavior by saying, like, the sign said, buy 18 Snickers bars for your freezer. So I said, assuming you like Snickers bars, how many you purchase? So the results show that my store signage worked, because those in the no anchor condition on average bought 2.4 bars, but those on the high anchor condition, when I said buy 18 bars, on average, they bought 5.4 bars. So it's not like just, you know, in judgment that might be irrelevant, like guessing the age of a Gandhi, but something with a potential implication for marketing behavior. I even tried to do something more extreme. I just ask half of you, say, think about a number 1 and 10, and write this number in the box below. And the other half, I asked to think about a number between 9,991 and 10,000 and write it down. And then I asked how many African countries are members of the United Nations. So on the low anchor condition, the estimate was 18.8. The actual number is 54. And in the high anchor condition, the estimate was 24.4. So even something that was unrelated to the question, right? The previous anchors, they were kind of related to the question, was able to influence behavior. So another example, I gave you this example of a software that's being developed by a university, and I wanted to estimate what would be a fair price for a small business version. To half of the participants in the low anchor condition, I offer this price. Well, I want to let you know that the personal version costs this much and the family version costs this much, but in the high anchor condition, I added a high anchor enterprise version that costs $299 a month. So when I got your estimates of the expected price, so the people in the low anchor conditions thought that on average, the price for a small business should be $75. And the people in the high anchor condition that had the enterprise information, they estimated the price being $124. Right? So by providing the anchor, we have this innate need to compare things to something. And that's what often drives these types of results. All right, so implications for marketing, you can create anchors, that will influence behavior. If you have a markdown price, you can increase the per customer limit. Say, oh, only 20 units, which is if you want to sell more units. It is not a real limit because nobody would buy that number of units for that product, but it could potentially influence the amount that they buy. And a product that has multiple use, a high anchor example. Implications for consumer research and insights, the magnitude of values may influence response. Anchor effect, answers to questions may be anchored to prior ratings and values, kind of like a carryover effect. This may happen regardless of the meaningfulness of the anchor. Just like I asked you to write down a large or a small number. All right, let me show you some other examples of such what we call irrational behavior, bounded rationality behavior. So I'm going to give you an example of what's called contextual decoys. Imagine a situation where you are deciding between two wines, one that has a rating of 87 points and costs $12.69, and one that is rated at 73 points and is $6.69. Here's what the rating scales mean based on some research that I did online. So let's say under this situation, 70% of the people exposed to this context here, they choose the 87 points bottle at $12.69. Well, now imagine that your context change and I add another bottle that is 67 points, which is lower than this one, and also is more expensive. This is considered a decoy because this alternative is completely dominated and it should not influence the decision between these two bottles here because it's lower in quality and is higher in price than this option. But what often happens, that shifts the perception of this alternative here. And then I'm not saying it's going to increase by 20%, but I'm trying to give you a sense of the direction of the change. So the choice proportion for this bottle of wine here might increase as a function of this completely irrelevant option in the set. Right? So that's why it would be, if this happened, it would be considered irrational behavior. Well, what could also happen is that I have an option that's on the higher end, but this option is still below the level of quality for this relative to this option here, and it's more expensive. So it's again a completely dominated option and should not influence your choice. However, what we see oftentimes is that preference for this option here increases as a function of this decoy. What's interesting also is that this effect may happen even if the options are not available. Imagine you went to Amazon's website, you saw not wine, but any other product, you have options that are meaningful and options that are not meaningful. Even if Amazon said sold out, not available, it's likely to influence your perceptions about this product. So the question is why this happened. So we are making a decision on a two attribute plane here. Okay, so the first dimension, it is price desirability. So the cheaper bottle has a price that's more desirable, and perceived quality. The more expensive bottle has a less desirable price, but has a higher desirability in terms of perceived quality. So what happened when I introduced this option here? This option is less desirable in terms of price. That's why I choose this to the left of this bottle, and is lower in quality. So that's why it's below the target bottle. Well, what happened is that the perception of this bottle changed because we tend to put people, things in scales. So we judge things relatively. And then what happened is that the perception of that bottle that was 73 points and $6.69 increased in terms of price desirability and perhaps quality. And then now that option is not as far off in terms of perceived quality and is more desirable relative to this bottle. That's why choice proportions tend to change towards this option here. The same is happening on the more expensive bottle, where I introduce a decoy, a completely dominated choice in terms of price, desirability, and quality, but that makes me rearrange perceptually. I put these products on a scale, and then that changes the perception. This wine perhaps becomes more perceived as higher quality and also more desirable in terms of price. And that's why the choice proportion for these options, for this option here, tends to change. So a famous story you might have heard that the economists used to have this option where you could buy economist.com subscription for $59, print and web subscription for $125, and a print subscription for $125. This option is completely irrelevant, is completely dominated by the other options. So, but what happened when then I really did an experiment showing exactly this kind of same ad. When you have this decoy here, the choice proportion for this option here, the print and web, is 84%, and for the economy subscription only is 16%. However, if you remove that decoy, you can see a flip in the preferences. Now, more people want to buy the economist.com subscription, and fewer people want to buy the print and web subscription, which from a revenue standpoint is not ideal for the economists, which means that that decoy, it is there and it's helping the economists. So why is it irrational? Because that option is completely dominated, but it helps you to make a decision by creating more standards of comparison. All right, I did something similar to you guys. So I offer you a credit card that was either 1% or 2% cash back and cost $20 or $40 annual fee. Ideally, I would have the chance to calibrate, so we start at 50-50. And then in one condition, I told people that there was a third option. There was, again, a decoy because it was 0.8 cash, which is less than 1%, but it was more expensive. And in another condition, I said that there was another credit card that was 1.8%, which is lower than the 2%, and also it was more expensive than the $40 that you pay for the 2%. On the 1.8% and $50, there was no change in your preference. So ideally, I would have to calibrate this in order to be able to find what are the levels that I'm going to be able to make you shift your preferences. But for the second decoy, the cheaper decoy, where it's 0.8% at $30, there was some change. Right? So about 14% of the people shift their preference from the 1%, increase the desirability of the option that was 1% at $20. So just using that data and using the knowledge of perceptual of decoys, I was able to influence the results of our survey. All right, so another thing that I did, I told you, like, well, we got this wine from Brazil, and I chose Brazil not only because I'm originally from Brazil, but also because Brazil is not known as a producer of wine. So that will kind of take away your range of price distribution. And then I said, and then I asked you like, okay, so you got this bottle of wine, you went to a store, and you saw a section of Brazilian wines, and in their section, the prices of Brazilian wines were the following. So in one condition, what I call left skew, most prices were below your wine, which was $15.99. In the right skew condition, most prices were above the price of your wine. But what I was asking you to tell me is how you perceive the price, the quality, and the generosity of your friend for giving you a bottle that costs $15.99. Okay? So everybody was answering the question about $15.99. So this is based is not based on Fenton decoys, because we're not talking about dominated alternatives here, but it's based on Parducci's range frequency theory and some of my research published at the Journal of Consumer Research. So so here's the prices, and I ask you to judge the price, the expensiveness, the quality, and the generosity of your friend. So on the left skew condition, where most of the prices were below the price of your target bottle, you were much more likely to think that the wine was expensive than in the right skew condition when most of the prices were higher. Again, why is that irrationality? Because $15.99 is $15.99 no matter what. When I ask about quality, same thing. In this condition here, you are likely to think the wine was higher in quality, and here you also you are thinking that your friend was more generous. So range frequency theory has this name is because the range of the extremes of the distribution and the density of the distributions can affect the perception of prices. You can see how you could, if you are more profitable for you to sell this product here, you would increase the density or extend the range of the options here because, no, sorry, I would do the opposite. I would increase the density here because $15.99 would be perceived as less expensive, and I would sell more of that product. So another thing, another example I was going to give in terms of rationality or irrationality is the power of free. I asked half of you, if you saw lean truffles being sold for 4 cents and Hershey Kisses for 1 cent, and the other half, if they're sold for 3 cents and free. From an economic standpoint, I'm lowering both prices by 1 cent. So we shouldn't change the, proportions of preference. So what I saw is that when they were being sold for 4 cents and 1 cent, 81% of participants chose the lean truffle. However, when they offer at 3 cents and free, that the proportion of people that now chose lean decreased by 22%. So the takeaway here, like if you can offer something for free, that will have like a big bump on your, especially if you're offering a bundle. Another concept I want to talk to you about is this idea: are our preferences across time consistent? Well, this idea of a hyperbolic discount is that, like, wow, we are very impatient in the short term, but we're a lot more patient in the long term. So what usually happens, I didn't do this experiment, but if I had done, it would be like, would you rather have $100 right now or $110 tomorrow? $110 tomorrow because of this hyperbolic discount doesn't sound as much more. However, when I offer like, would you rather have $100 100 days from today and 101 days from today? Usually people will pick the 110 because here the discounting is lower and you don't see that you are losing too much by waiting. Again, classical economics assume you have well-established preferences. I just showed a bunch of examples how I can influence your preferences based on the way I manipulate the context or the way I manipulate time perception. I'm going to skip temporal construal theory in interest of time. So in terms of implications for marketing sales, use dominant options, decoys with features similar but inferior to the most profitable offering. Skew the distribution to influence an option to make it more attractive, and whenever possible, bundle products in a way that one of the products is offered for free. In terms of implication for consumer research and insights, context may strongly influence judgment. The skewness of distribution affects perception about stimuli and target stimuli. Dominance of alternatives in a survey, such as decoy, affect perception of value and choice. All right, this is going to be at the last block of the presentation. I also did a bunch of small experiments here where I, for example, I ask you this question so you must pick one of two gambles. Choice A, you have a 50% chance of winning $1,000 and a 50% chance of winning $0. Choice B, you have a 100% chance of winning $450. Okay. Well, which option has a greater expected value? If you believe in classical economics, option A should be the one we choose, because option A has an expected value of $500, which is a 50% chance of winning $1,000. Option B has an expected value of $450. Let's see how you behave. Not surprisingly, based on what I know in terms of behavioral theories, the vast majority of you were what we call bounded irrational or bounded rational or irrational, and chose the risk-free option, even though that option has a lower expected value. I say like, okay, let me flip the scenario here. Okay, I say now instead of winning, you have a 50% chance of losing $1,000 and a 50% chance of losing $0. And choice B, you have a 100% chance of losing $450. So remember, like here, you chose the risk-free option. Now, in terms of expected value, option B is better, okay? Because your expected value for that is only losing $450, while in option A, your expected value is losing $500. What happened here is that we saw a flip in the result. Right now, people are willing to take a greater risk just to have a chance of not losing money. Okay? So what happened that what I just showed, like when we are making choice under risk, we are risk averse in the domain of gains, and we are risk seeking in the domain of losses. So here, we were risk averse. We went with the risk-free option, but here we were risk seeking, just because we have such a loss aversion that we're willing to take a bigger loss, the risking having to lose $1,000 just so I have a chance to lose nothing. So that's another question. I asked you about your trip, and then you went to the hotel, and you decide to order food, and you and your friend, there was 2 pizza places in that town. They both had a large pizza for $20 and 12 wings for $20, but they had different promotions. The first one was offering like, buy the large pizza for $20, which is the full price, and get the wings for $10, which is discount. The second pizzeria was telling me, get the pizza for $10 discounted if you buy the wings for $20. No matter what way you look at this, it is you're paying $30 either way. So from a classical rational standpoint, you should be indifferent. I should get a 50-50% here distribution. This scenario is based on my research on price discounting in framing and bundle evaluation. So what happened is that you guys behaved as I predicted. You prefer this option here, okay? Even though you're paying $30 either way. I'm going to show you why you prefer that option. The reason why you prefer the option is based on what called value function from prospect theory. So this theory predicts that our value function on the domain of gains is concave and is less steeper than the loss gains. So the pleasure that you get from a $10 gain, see this magnitude here, the dashed line, is smaller than the pain of losing $10. Okay? So let's imagine a scenario. Let's say the pizza was more or less at a reference price, like 0, there's no gain or no loss. Now, in the wings, I made the wings expensive so they would feel like a loss. Then, so if I give the discount to the pizza, what happened is that the perceived gain will be this much. But if I give the discount to the wings, the perceived avoided loss will be that much larger. And that's why people tend to prefer this option here. You feel like you are, it's less of a loss. Right. This idea of reference points, the reference points are relative. If I offer you, if two companies offer you a contract that paid you $60,000 in the first year, 70 and 80 in the second and the third, or 80,000 in the first, 70 in the second, and 60 in the third, most people will choose this increasing trend because you adapt to a reference point. In 70, it's a gain relative to the reference point. In 80, is a gain relative to 70. However, the optimal decision here would be to choose offer B because of time value of money. You are getting more money upfront, but it's very hard for people to take that option. And this idea of gains and losses and framing happens in the marketplace. See this example here where this offer here is framed as 1% fat, and this option here is framed as 99% fat-free. Because fat has acquired a negative value, throughout the years, this option is probably going to be seen as more negative than this option here, even though they are exactly the same product. Let me just show one more example of their data. I don't want to go too much over my time. I asked you also that Mr. A and Mr. B bought lottery tickets. Mr. A won $100 and Mr. B won $50. When Mr. A left the store, he realized he had parked in an illegal zone and received a $50 parking ticket. I asked, who is happier? At the end of the day, remember at the very beginning, I say, states of wealth is what matters. They have the exact state of wealth. They should be equally happier. But you guys expect Mr. B, the person who didn't lose anything, would be happier. And that's exactly because of what you're talking about, that the pain of losing $50, okay, is much larger than the value that you have of retaining $50. And that's why it hurts you. And we see this kind of behaviors. Let me show hedonic editing. So hedonic editing is this idea that we edit things in our minds to make us happier. So for example, Mr. A, instead of saying, I won $100 and then I lost 50, a better way is say like, I won $50 today. It'll make you feel better. So things that help us, so for example, segregate multiple gains. So if you, I bet you would be happier if you had won 2 lottery tickets of $50 each than 1 ticket of $100. So segregate gains, aggregate multiple losses that help us to cope better with the pain or enjoy more the gains. So I asked a question, I want to see hedonic editing from your data. So I told there was this bottle of wine you bought for 25 bucks and now it costs $75. And I said, like, how would you tell yourself you're drinking when you drink that bottle? What, how would you edit this behavior in order to make ourselves feel better. So the optimal rational answer would be $75, which is the price to replace that product. 19 out of 58 chose that option, which is about 1/3. So, but there's people like, it's zero, it's paid. That account is closed. Some people say, I profited $50. Some people thought like, it's $25 plus interest. And some people like, it's $25. So different people use different strategies to justify why they were drinking a $75 bottle of wine. So let me just go to my advice so we can open for questions. So just like any other tools that you have in your tool set, use behavioral economics when necessary, or understand how can influence your results, okay? Or neuromarketing, or whatever tool you have in your box, but with a goal to solve a problem, a research problem that will influence a decision, right? So I use this analogy. Do not build a wall, so you can use your shiny new power drill. Don't create a research problem so you can use your neuroimaging, or don't create a research problem so you can use your new behavioral economics. So some additional reading. So these are very popular books, and here's my contact information. I'll like to now open to questions.
Thank you very much, Marcus. That was really interesting. So we have 3 questions thus far. First one, so this was back in reference to when you were talking about anchoring, low versus high anchoring. And he asked, so this is Craig, these are averages, but what was the median? Or did you control for outliers?
So what I did was a quick clean. So I took like the 2 extreme values, okay, the lowest. And so, for example, there's somebody that estimated the Turkey population was 2 billion people, and somebody says that's 80 people, right? So I removed from this kind of data the 2 extremes. However, if I had outliers, that would increase my standard error. If by increasing my standard error would make it harder for me to find statistically significant differences, right? Because the outliers would inflate the standard error. So the fact that I found a statistically significant difference, and they were way below 0.05, they were like 0.011. So that means that even if there were outliers, they were not enough to show me that there were true difference between those 2 groups.
Mm-hmm. Right. Next question is from Praveen. Hi, Professor. This is interesting. Thank you. Wonder why 1.8% of $50 did not work as an effective decoy. Mm-hmm. I think this is in reference to the banking, the cash back.
So I think because, so there was already a preference for higher rewards over price. So I think I would have to calibrate more where, like, I think if I kept at 1.8% but increased the price to $90, okay, that might have influence. I think there was just enough different perceptual difference between those 2 options that influenced the result. So, because also you have to think like in terms of percentages and price, it's a concave curve, right? So the difference between 1 and 2 is usually perceived to be greater than the difference between 2 and 3. So a little bit of calibration and knowing better the audience would probably have helped, and I will be able to move in both directions.
Yeah, more clarity there. This question is from Brian. He asked, have you seen the Dunning-Kruger effect with any of these decision-making methodologies, i.e., are some more effective when people who think they're more effective at decision-making but aren't?
I haven't seen him, but also not measuring expertise, right? So So because I'm randomly assigned people to conditions, there is no reason to believe that there was more experts in one condition than the other. It is possible that the effect is going on, but given the effect is not systematic in one condition versus the other, so it's there is no reason to believe that would be affecting. However, so in that extent, in that sense, that can only be seen as noise in the data, which would make it harder to get the result. However, if I had measured expertise and had enough sample to test that, I could test whether the effect was going on. So that's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Good. Next question is from Kevin. He asked, how do you foresee some of the aspects of loss aversion or conceptualization of free changing in post-COVID-19 world? Also said, very informative presentation, great use of data collected, thank you.
Thank you. I think right now I think one thing that the COVID-19 has done is that I would say we are probably using more system 2 than system 1, because there's potential risk outcomes for our behavior. I think of myself, I never thought about like wiping grocery stores or not putting wiping grocery store bags or not putting grocery store bags on the counter and put on the floor. So all this, the fear and the potential risk of the outcome being negative has heightened our perception, which means we are more likely using system 2, I don't know for how long, or if it's just like a temporal effect that's going to happen for a short period of time. But because of the potential risk and negative outcome, that is likely making us think. I don't know, Maureen, have you seen yourself thinking about things you didn't used to think before as a result of COVID-19?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean the grocery store is like you're going into battle these days.
Yeah. So that means
your whole setup and everything.
Yeah, so that means that we are more likely using more system 2, which means it's more resource depleting, which means you are probably like more tired at the end of the day, and might lead to, one of the concerns also is leading to mental health issues, right? Because you're constantly processing negative information when you usually would not do that.
Yeah, that's true. Next question is from Molly. What is your take on the ethics of manipulating consumer behavior based on irrational decision making?
So I think, marketers will try to do that to their benefit, and I think like educating consumers that are susceptible to that is it's an important issue, but also think in terms of policy making, right? Because a lot of these things are being used at national levels to try to influence them, like, by brightening the lights around produce makes people consume more produce, by showing your behavior in terms of electricity consumption relative to your neighbors, improve the consumption of energy. So for like anything, there's like, a negative side, how we can trick consumers to behave in a way that will favor me, but perhaps not at the best interest in terms of well-being by the consumers, but we can also influence consumers to behave in a way that improves their welfare.
Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe we have time for one more question. That was brilliant, Marcus, thank you. Can you speak more so on how often companies are using the metrics available in the market to shape their attainment of KPIs rather than the necessary tools to measure if they are attaining their KPIs, i.e., crafting the message to meet the measurements that are more commonly available rather than actually measuring against their objectives? Is this an issue? Where have you seen opportunities for a pivot for major companies?
Mm-hmm. I think that's always an issue, and that's based on the idea of, in economics, of agency theory, how incentives are aligned, right? So imagine like nowadays brand managers are highly rewarded for short-term results in terms of sales volume. What they'll do, they're going to rely a lot more in sales promotion than advertising, because the effect of advertising is long term. I might not be here 2 years from now as a brand manager. However, if every quarter I meet or exceed my sales goal, I will be promoted, or I'll get the new job, right? So what happens, if the company doesn't align the incentives so that people will behave in a way that will accomplish their goal, they will be short-sighted, and they're going to behave in the best way to provide the best result in the short term. And that also speaks to the issue of, I'm sure all of you are in the insights industry and marketing research. You probably have seen clients that have a priori favor outcome, right? So they want to test 2 advertising campaigns, but they already think campaign A is better. And then they're going to collect the data, hopefully supporting that. If the data does not support that, there's a good chance they say, no, we need more research. Right? So that's called, in psychology, that's called confirmatory hypothesis bias. Because you have a priori hypothesis, just like the KPIs, I will biasly look for information that will support my hypothesis rather than dismiss my hypothesis.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's very well-known behavior. It's very well-known, well-known and well-documented kind of behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Marcus. This is super interesting, and we do have other questions that we don't have time for, but is it true that you'll be around for some time after the session?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So everybody feel free to reach out to Marcus and get some more great information about his research, because it was really great, and I think all of us would be able to use this and think about bias going forward when we're crafting our research questions and thinking about our approaches. So once again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Marian.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too.